guys? We are here with another episode of the Freedom Storyteller podcast, and I'm excited to introduce you all to my brother, Anthony Bobo Jr. He's a senior associate with the Joseph Factor Group. And Anthony, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, man, it is just so great to be here. Like, you've been talking to me about this for so long, and I'm finally on your podcast.
Here we go. Well, hey, before we really get into the first deep question, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
So, my name is Anthony Bobo Jr. I actually live in the Washington, D.C. area. Been here almost 30 years with my lovely family, my wife and 2 children. And yeah, we're just striving our best to love and community and do what we can to improve our little space in the world. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, one of the primary questions that I like to ask folks, and I really think it's the driving question of this entire conversation, we talk about freedom and the story of us walking closer and closer to freedom. So for you, what would your freedom story be? And by that, we're really talking about your story with coming to know who Jesus is and surrendering to him. So what would you describe that to be?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story for me. So, you have these dynasties, and even if we talk about the United States, of like Rockefellers or rich people, you look at the Bushes, they're like politics, or Kennedy's politics. Man, in my family, everybody was in ministry. Like, I can look back to my great granddad that was a minister in the church. So I'm talking about my great granddad, my great grandmother, my grandfather, my grandmother, my pop, and my mom, all involved in ministry. And so I come from that line. And even my sister and my brothers, we're still all involved in ministry. So even with that rich heritage and walking with the Lord and being around church my entire life, there's a difference of, like, let me see. It's a difference between being a member of the church, and the understanding that you're a part of this family and who Jesus really is and who he can be in your life. Yeah. So for me, I remember we were in Tampa, Florida, where my dad was pastoring. And
is that where you grew up? So that's where you grew up, in Tampa?
So, well, I was born, like I said, this is a journey because he was in several places. So born in Columbus, Ohio, around the age of 7, he was assigned to a church in Atlanta, Georgia. And then at the age of, I was probably around 15 or 16, we moved to Tampa, Florida, and that's where I finished high school. And then I came to the Washington, D.C. area to go to college. I actually went to Bowie State University. Shout out to historic Black colleges.
There you go.
Yeah. So, but I remember I had to be around the age of 15 or 16, and this minister came and was sharing at our church. And I could just see the love that he had for the people. And then I could see this prophetic word that he was giving. And I don't remember the message, like what he was actually saying, but I could feel what was there. And I said, wow, what he has, that's what I want. What he has, I can give my life to that. And so I marked that as my moment that I understood that I wanted to have a strong relationship with Christ and to give my life to him.
Wow.
Well, of course, since that moment, even being so young, there are a lot of other challenges, a lot of other exploring, and even if you will, mistakes or whatever. But I always knew that I wanted to live a life close to Christ, and I wanted to give myself to help others. So even you fast forward to the Joseph Factor Group, which I'll talk a little bit more about that. That's a group of Christians that we've come together, that we can help others, whether it's churches, individuals, organizations, to fulfill their ultimate purpose. And when we talk about that, of course, we're talking about the mission that God has put, the purpose that God has put in their life.
Yeah.
And I've learned that my purpose for living is, I don't necessarily have to be the one in leadership, but I want to be there, the one supporting the leader, the one that name is never called, but always the one that's there that the leader can depend on to get things done, and that they don't have to worry about whatever that thing is that they normally have to worry about, because I know Bobo got it. You know, I know Bobo got it. That's the whole thing. And there used to be a time, and I was talking to a friend about it this week. You know, coming up and playing basketball in the hood or whatever, you know, everybody wants to be the one making the scores, making the shots, you know, dunking or whatever else. And man, there came a time in my life I understood, like, I admired Dennis Rodman because he played his role. Like, when he was there, he was a difference maker, things like that. And you wanted him on the team because you knew he was going to do his thing. He might have scored a bunch of points, you know, whatever else. I mean, man, the stadium would go crazy even if he scored 1 point, you know.
Right.
But he was there on defense. He was going to get the rebounds. He was going to hustle. And for me, that's where I am. I want to be that dependable one beside the leader, making sure that things are getting done, and ultimately, you know, helping to see, you know, the life of Christ lived out in others.
Yeah, man, that's so beautiful. I'm just going to interject real quick just to affirm what you just said, because where I know you now is this ongoing cohort that we've been a part of for almost a year now, and you've been like the stable face of that cohort, the one who, and it's so beautifully named too. The name of the cohort is the Aaron and her cohort, which, like, the whole point is they're not Moses, right? Exactly. Everybody knows Moses. Moses is the one who got the tablets. Moses is the one who held up the staff. But like, they're holding up his arms as he holds the staff, you know. And you have been a great testament to what that is and the importance of that. And that's why you one of the first ones I was like, I want to talk to this brother, because I know, because you've established a consistent place in my life in over this past year as someone I know, like, so much, you know, as a rock, so to speak, in that regard. So I can definitely.
So you gotta allow me, now that you brought it up, man, like, that's one of my greatest things that I'm so proud of right now. You both individually and that collective group, walking together during this pandemic, right? How I mean, we couldn't have known how this was going to work out, right? But now we're connecting through Zoom and having shared experiences. And every time we get together, and I know some people say this and it's overkill, but every time we get together, like, the presence of God is there. And what he shows us, and those are collective experiences, I'm just like, sometimes those nights I can't sleep, because I'm just like, what was that? And you play it back in your mind. And so I'm grateful for this time with you. I'm grateful for you being a part of that cohort. And we're looking forward to December 3rd and 4th, you know, meeting in Tampa and closing that thing out. But yeah, that's if you want to ask what makes me smile at this moment, is that cohort. Now, it's also giving me the biggest headache at this moment, because we're going to the closeout. So
right. You know, so all the logistics.
yes. But that's awesome. Thanks for raising that, because we're excited about that work.
That's super amazing. Now, so just to bring it back now to a bit of your foundational development. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna take it back. So you said it was around 16 when you had that moment that you keep going back to. So after 16, at that point, while you're not perfect and you're still, you know, you're young in the Lord, but you're in the Lord, right? Were there some significant places you tried to step into either your calling or places where you were trying to, employ your faith in a larger way than you had the first, 16 years, and maybe walk us through what some of those experiences were like?
Yeah. So then, definitely living in my parents' house, I had to continue to do church.
Right.
But going away to college, I was still involved in church. And I was actually under a pastor that she was so amazing. She was so amazing. Now, for some people, that's going to be like, oh, yes. She was so amazing.
Right.
And she had this ability to understand people. And with me personally, we gained such a great relationship. And she taught me how to do ministry. So when I would often, and she was an older lady, so I would often drive her whether long distances with my family or if we were doing things in the area. But wow, how we would go and visit the sick and how she would care for them, and always leaving them uplifted and happy. When we would sometimes, and this was the old school kind of mentality, we would go to people's houses that were in times of trouble, and she would go in and say, well, can I do the dishes for you? Things like that,
like practical help.
That's the type of, yeah. Oh yeah. Right. And knowing that there were these needs. And so she taught me a lot. She also taught me, I went to school for business, and she taught me through the use, by using me, how you use people in their gifts and their talents where they are, and not try to make them do something that they are not. So she used me and some of my other colleagues that were around the same age, all in school, in our giftings and our talents. And she did it with no reservation. And so under her, I learned a lot about ministry and how to care for others. I learned a lot about organizations and systems. And I always was able to ask her questions. And I think about it even towards the end of her life, which I didn't know that she was sick, but I didn't know that she would leave so soon. Most recently, it was actually 2 years ago. Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, Pastor John Perkins in Jackson, Mississippi, and we released our book, Permission to Love. And before she passed, she told me, I can't wait until you publish your book. Now, I would share with her, hey, I want to publish a book. She never saw that book, but she told me before she passed that she couldn't wait to do that. And actually, I was a part of a cohort for the Christian Community Development Association. And I had to leave one of the cohorts early to come back to DC to attend her funeral. And I think it's so like God that the person that introduced me to Christian Community Development, I end up writing a book with him and we publish it. And she would say that I can't wait until you publish your book. So grateful for that. And then I would have to share that my dad, he's always been a guy that gets things done. So he got his doctorate from Jackson State. And while he was there in that area, he developed a relationship with Dr. John Perkins. And he actually was on his board for the Spencer Perkins Center there in Jackson, which is an international center.
Can you, before you go further into that, can you give folks that don't know who Dr. John Perkins is a brief nugget of an overview? How I just know because I discovered him maybe 5 years ago, and I feel ashamed I just discovered him then. So I got to imagine that there are others who are, as I was, that don't know of how awesome this man is.
All right. All right. So this is the best thing about like living in this time, that you can Google anybody. And so if you
You
Google
said
Dr.
Google
John
him.
Perkins, man, you see this guy preach, like you hear him preach, so captivating, even at the stage and age that he is now.
Yeah.
Clarity, this understanding of the need for justice,
Yeah.
And being able to speak truth to power. And Dr. Perkins, civil rights leader in Mississippi, did work in California, was almost beat to death in Mississippi. You get to learn about that story. And in that moment, in his anger, God touched him, even at that time when he was almost beat to the point of death. And him and his wife and his family have been crusaders for justice and strong pillars in the Christian movement around the world. And I got to know him, as I was saying, with the work that my dad was doing with him at the Spencer Perkins Center. And, you know, we're the type of family that when one of us is involved, all of us was involved. So my dad was like, we're going to have this board meeting and I want you to facilitate the meeting for us. So I go to Jackson, Mississippi, and man, being there at the Spencer Perkins Center and seeing that work, and then meeting Dr. Perkins' grandson, who we end up writing a book together. I tell people I met my brother from a different mother. And to this day, John and I are close. But that was our first interaction, and we automatically, you know, we hit it off. But seeing that work and understanding later on the body of work of Dr. Perkins and the influence that he's had, that gave me a clearer picture and understanding about stepping into this place where there's a breach, you know, even in 2021, dealing with race, right?
Yeah.
And this understanding that we have to, these are Anthony Bobo's words, we have to replace this system, this understanding of white supremacy with justice.
Amen.
And and these words and you know, and I have to clarify to say biblical justice, because I think some of the justice that people are looking for now, it's like replacing white supremacy, if you will, with black supremacy or with Asian supremacy or dollar supremacy. That's not going to work. You know, in order for this thing really to look different and to be different, it has to be replaced with biblical justice. And what does that look like? That looks like me wanting for my brother and my sister the same thing I want for myself.
Come on.
And being willing not only to stand up for that and to fight for that, I'm willing to do that in as much as if it was for me, because I understand ultimately when you have and you get, I have and I get. And this infighting that is even going on. We live in the Washington, D.C. area. So in Virginia, man, I'm watching some of the stuff that's going on in politics with that governor race. And they're just using these buzzwords that are to divide. And one side, they're saying they're not dividing, but the words that they're using are so divisive. And so we have to get beyond that. And the only way that we're going to get beyond that is, you know, run into the love of Christ and living with him. So at that moment, seeing Dr. Perkins in action and what he's been able to do in his lifetime and the legacy that he has, definitely is another pivotal moment in my life. And then I have to tell you, man, what you just brought up about the Aaron and her pastors and leaders cohort, that right now is like, I'm so proud of what we're doing and the future of that cohort. the future of bringing
Because
leaders together.
we were the first year, right?
You're the first year. Yep, you're the first year. So bringing leaders together who may be considered non-traditional leaders, maybe didn't go through the formal seminary training and all those other kind of things, but are committed to making a difference in community. And to make a commitment to that, to those leaders, has been awesome. To work with Dr. Robert Owens out of Atlanta, Georgia, and the legacy that he's had in doing ministry, to work with Dr. Ephraim Smith out of Sacramento, California, and the work that he's doing there, and his writings that he's done has been influencing so many, and working with Bishop Timothy Wynn out of Tampa, Florida. Sorry. Right. And the work that he's doing there. So that's just been a great walk. And so I'm excited what God is doing in that area, and excited to see what's going to come of that. But so those are some pivotal moments, and there's a whole bunch of other things. But I would say if there were big posts or signs along the way, I would name those as those signs.
That's beautiful, man. And I don't know if I've told you this, but the cohort for me, it came as an answer to prayer, like a literal answer to prayer, as I was spending so much time trying to I think dissect the theological training I'd had from a lot of the cultural training that I'd unintentionally had, and was trying to discern, so what's cultural, what's theological. And I knew at that point that I needed not just Black leaders and not just Christian leaders, but I needed like solid Christians who knew the Black struggle, you know what I mean? And like that I could then journey through. And I didn't really know where to go to find that. And then got a phone call from Bishop Wynn, and he was like inviting me into this thing. And I'd heard of Ephraim Smith already, and I was like, oh wow, he's part of this too. Okay, let's go. And I've had such an amazing journey of, I think for me it's even I think the most and I'm not gonna make this interview about me, but the most most impactful thing so far for me has been the journey of self-discovery I think I've been having as I'm going through, of really getting a firm understanding on, okay, so who am I in this regard? What is the Lord called me to here? And like, so what is that thing that I've been messing with here? So that's what this, it's been really giving me a solid foundation again, as I felt like for the past couple of years going out in the ministry on my own, I've been feeling like I don't really know what's going on. So it's really been perfect timing in that.
Great.
So you talked a little bit about it, but I want to know if you don't mind going into a little bit more about the just a couple minutes about what is the central focus or point of your book, and then we could talk about maybe how people can get a hold of that. Now I'll put a link in the description for that, but tell us a little bit about the book that you co-wrote.
Yeah, so I'll tell the story behind it.
Okay.
So I'm in Jackson, Mississippi, and John and I are working. I think we were working on a strategic plan for his new church, Common Ground. And we were sitting around and we were just talking about a speaking engagement that he had coming up at a university. And we started reflecting on the Great Commission and, how we as a church have gotten so far away from this mandate for us to go into these places like Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world, that Great Commission. And even imagining the hearers of Jesus' words, like what are they thinking when they hear those names of those places? Similar that if I I had a conversation with you right now and I said Washington, D.C., there's just some vivid things that come into your mind, knowing those places and understanding as Jesus is sharing those names of those cities, people are talking about these experiences, or feeling these experiences that they've had in those places. And so we wanted to challenge the church to say, all right, we're commissioned to love. And we're commissioned to love not only in these safe spaces where, we feel comfortable, but when he starts talking about Samaria and, he's talking to these Jewish people and they're saying, hey, the lady told Jesus at the well, hey, the Jews and Samaritans, we don't deal with each other. Like we don't deal. So what are you talking about? And so that's some of the challenges we're dealing with in America right now. And whether it's white and black people not dealing with each other, whether it's rich or poor not dealing with each other, there's these, like I mentioned earlier, this vicious kind of language that unfortunately is even coming out of the church.
Yeah.
In this self-righteous manner, right? And we're talking about, and I thought about it today, we're talking about we're followers of Jesus Christ, but we're more like the Pharisees and scribes in the book than we are of Jesus, because we want to bring up religious traditions to the Savior of the world. So we're like, hey, how about this Sabbath day thing? You got to honor the Sabbath. And he says, whoa, what is the Sabbath about? Man,
I'm the Lord of the Sabbath.
Exactly. You're like, what is going on here? So, so the book that we will call Commission to Love, and it's just our striving to challenge the church. And it's a book of reflection. It's a book of curriculum. We ask questions so we can reflect. And what I've learned, if you're talking about the cohort and how that experience has shaped you, and for me, that experience and some other things I've had going on, like I received this epiphany. My thought has been that I've had all these experiences in life that I can go to people and share it and say, hey, this is what you need to do. Because of my experiences, this is what you need to do. I know the way. I am understanding more and more that all those experiences that I've had in life is to prepare me to ask the questions so someone can know and answer their own struggles for themselves. Not for me to come with the solution, but for them to tap into what's inside of them. And ultimately, we know when we're led by the Spirit of God, for them to tap into that Spirit of God within them and get that answer. So Anthony doesn't come as the answer. The question raise the answer within themselves. So, man, that's what we're trying to do. And so grateful for you asking. And you can get it at Amazon. At one time, man, we were like ranked in the top 50 books in our genre or whatever else. We were hitting it hard, trying to get everybody out buying and everything. The pandemic put a little brakes on us, but we're looking to still do and to share. So if you can put that in the
we'll put a link to that in the description for sure.
Awesome.
You mentioned in that kind of the thrust of it was trying to challenge the church to ultimately recognize their commission to love. I'm curious, as you kind of look back over your life, what are some of the places where you really feel like the Lord has just challenged you? And specifically, I think like that maybe have resulted in some of the most difficult or trying seasons of your life, or places maybe where even your faith was pushed to the brink, or however you would answer that.
Wow. Great question. You should do this, man. You should like start a podcast and do questions like this. So for me, I grew up in a holiness tradition. And I'm talking about holiness, not I mean, holiness where like conversations about stockings and y'all, most people don't even know what stockings are. Hairdress, all this other kind of stuff. Like our conversations, like real conversations. So where I was challenged when I encountered people that had the obvious spirit and move of God that didn't come out the same tradition that I came out. And to know that God can use whoever he wants to use, and it's not geared towards my tradition, even my theology or bent or slant or whatever else. Man, I tell you, my dad, I'm so grateful for who he is and where he's been. You had a chance to meet him during the cohort.
Yeah. Oh, he's for real. Yeah, when he came in, I was like, oh, okay. All right, Dr. Bobo.
So I remember, man, we lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and he took me to the Winans, to see the Winans in concert. And that was when it was all the boys. And man, I have never, that was my first time experiencing the presence of God so powerfully. And no one ever told me that I only could experience the presence of God in my tradition. But I think I always felt that. Like, no one ever said that, but I always felt that. And so when I had that experience at the Winans concert, that challenged me, right? And made me feel something a little different. And then going out and dealing with others and doing work in community, and even understanding that I was limiting myself in my relationships, even if I was saying because somebody was, I never said it, but even if I felt that because someone was Muslim, then maybe I should question my interaction with them, maybe if somebody had a different thought and process than me, then maybe I should. But man, once that true relationship with him, it washes all that away. It washes all that away. It allows you to say, whatever God's will is, allow that to happen. Amen. And that might come like Peter, he's sitting there, he's dreaming, and these pork chops start coming down, and bacon start coming down, and he's like, "No, I can't eat that." What are you talking about? Like, hey, I said, hey, if that's what I want, that's it. And then he goes to the house of Cornelius, and and he's able to bless and save. And so I think that was the hardest thing to understand, that petition that Jesus tore down allows us to live in concert and harmony with all human beings on this earth.
Amen. That is such a beautiful thing. And I love how you walked through that, the reality of experiencing God in a new context is really what the Lord used to open your eyes, because that's really a part of my whole story here. And it was interesting for me. It wasn't even so much that like I stepped out of my context, experienced God in a new way, and then was like, wow. But it was like the Lord in the midst of my context was like, there's more. It's not just this lane. It's not just this way. And then sent me to go and experience things in a new way. But I agree that, or I have experienced, I think, a similar result of just this understanding that there's not this, while there's the narrow way of submission to God and what his command is, there's not a narrow experience of God, right? There's a vast and broad way that we actually experience this singular, amazing spirit. It's beautiful thing, man. Before we get to kind of the lighthearted side of Anthony Bobo Jr., I do want to know a little bit more. You touched on it briefly earlier, but a little bit more about the Joseph Factor group and what prompted its creation, and maybe some of maybe success that you might have experienced right now, or where you're hoping it'll be. Anything more you'd want to share around that
Yeah, so I looked probably about 15 years ago or so. I was in grad school. I went to Johns Hopkins University for government, and while I was in there, I feel, I know I always say I feel as a primer because I'm not as definitive as some people would be, but I feel like God was speaking to me about my purpose. And so the name, the Joseph Factor Group, is about the biblical character Joseph in Genesis, who God uses him to ultimately save the nation of Israel. But the struggle he had to go through to get there, and even his own people, brothers, turned against him because of the jealousy, and I would even argue envy that they had of him because of the way that the father loved him. But Joseph had this ability to use, if you will, strategy and visioning to not only help himself, but eventually he was a savior of the nation. So very quickly we see him. The reason why he got in trouble is because he starts sharing his vision, right? Of, hey, y'all gonna all bow to me, whether it's through the sheaves or whatever else. He's like, y'all gonna all bow to me. And the brother's like, dude, I don't know who you think you are.
Right.
And in fact, Pop might have put that coat on you, but we got you. So they,
take it off real quick.
Exactly. So, and actually, that's gonna be the symbol of knowing that you ain't no longer around. We're gonna spread some blood on it. Yeah. We're not gonna, one of the brothers was kind enough. They're not gonna kill him, but they end up selling him into slavery. But even when he's in slavery in Potiphar's house, the scripture talks about him being the master of the house. That Potiphar trusted him enough to be the master of the house, and he showed this diligence to somebody else's stuff, right? And then he's in prison because Potiphar's wife wants him. You're a fine man, and then Joseph has this integrity, and then she's like, look, if you don't want me, hey, you going to jail? Right. Sets him up, lies on him, goes to jail. But even in jail, Joseph is found being diligent over somebody else's stuff. And then comes up two individuals, they have dreams, the butler and the baker, and Joseph uses his gifting of visioning and interpreting of dreams and shows them what will happen, and then tells them, hey, don't forget me when you get out of here, having that vision. And then ultimately gets in front of Pharaoh because, hey, he's able to tell dreams. Pharaoh has his dream disturbed. Nobody can give him the answer. And Joseph comes not only interpreting the dream, but a strategy for how Egypt could make it through, the famine. Yeah. And so, and ultimately, children of Israel is going to come to Egypt to get what they need because of the famine in the land. So with the Joseph Factor Group, it's built on that whole concept of coming alongside and using the giftings of strategic planning, visioning, and business practices to allow people to see their ultimate place. And so we've worked with cities here in the DC area, Seat Pleasant. We did some work with them around health. We done some community work around, like, there's a transition on one of our train rails, the corridor called the Green Line, and we helped stand up a community group for that. Most recently, we've been involved in the cohort that you're a part of,
Yep.
and coming alongside that and setting up the business practices and ultimately some of the strategy that are going to be long term for that. So we've been doing a lot of work. I'm excited. Next week, I helped the Maryland State Parks set up a mentoring program. And we've just finished the mentoring program this first year. So next week I'll be with them celebrating that and doing some evaluation on that process. So been very fruitful during this time, even of a pandemic, and trusting and believing God. And when we look at the future, my hope is that going into 2022, we'll actually set up a foundation to help leaders like you and other leaders that are doing great work in community and just need some business practices, strategy, some visioning, whatever they need. Like if we can get some of the funding to give you all, even the stuff that we talked about last week in the cohort, where like we need coaches, man. We need coaches. Like the mental stress and anguish to go through, or that you go through as a leader, you need a place where you can talk to somebody.
Yeah,
you need a
absolutely.
safe space where you can talk to somebody. And I want the Joseph Factor Group to be able to offer those services to people that maybe they can't quote unquote afford it,
right?
But we can allow people to resource. So because I don't think it's fair that, and I'm gonna be frank, people working in other communities, they have those resources.
Yeah.
And whether it is they have a coach or somebody that is, a mental health type individual, or they're able to take a sabbatical because they have this big team that's involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us, we're one deep, maybe two deep,
right,
and it's not because we think that we're all that. It's that we don't have the resources around us, to make it happen. So we look in the coming year that Joseph Factor will be able to have a foundation and allow our networks and those that want to resource, hey, put your money where your mouth is. I love this whole idea of, and I'm not getting into the controversy of it, but when people say Black Lives Matter or whatever else, or we want to transform communities or whatever else, all right, put your money where your mouth is.
Right. Prove
we
it.
have people around this. Yep. We got people around this country that are doing work. Don't act as if no one's being successful. We have people that are doing the work and being successful. Only thing they need is some more resources, and then they could, just make this thing explode. So that's the hope for the Joseph Factor. I'm asking you and those that watch this to just pray for us, because it is a journey that we believe God has us on, and we know through His will that things can be better and things can change.
Amen. Well, hey, man, I am definitely going to be praying for that. And I'd like to be a part of that in whatever way the Lord might.
Hey, man, we're family now. This whole cohort has made us family. So you're already a part of it. You just don't know it.
There we go. So if there's other ways that I could be more supportive, because I 100% agree with the part that you were just kind of last sharing about, where people might get the sense of, wanting to help or change some things, or at least that's what comes out of their mouth. And yet what ends up happening is there's a lot of either big organizations that people hear of or know of that maybe get support. And then there's all these smaller ones who are struggling, that are out there doing the work, that maybe are doing it in oblivion and obscurity, that really just need to be strengthened and supported and celebrated and all those sort of things. And like me and the folks that are in my crew, like those are the ones that as we discover, like we're like, okay, that's one that's for us, that we need to be celebrating and championing, and it was something that we discovered along our journey, where we started off like, because we just wanted to like help the marginalized, right? So the first thought was like, okay, so there were these large organizations, we could support that, and we were doing that. And then we had a pivotal conversation where a board member was like, but like everybody's helping them. What,
Yeah.
you know, like
Exactly.
what about some of these other local ones, or that other one over here, or this small missionary over here? And it was like, wow, yes, that's who we are. And once we discovered that, then it was like, oh yeah, that became an energizer for us. So I'm all in for that,
and
bro.
unfortunately, a lot of times those bigger groups, I mean, it's similar to, unfortunately, and I hate to liken it to this, but it's similar to the McDonald's, the Wendy's, and the Burger King, like, one size fits all, serving everything, and it doesn't have a flavor of, like, I'm in DC, so it doesn't have the flavor of mumbo sauce. Or you're in Chicago where y'all got that special pizza that I try to get to every time I get up there.
So deep dish.
Yeah, exactly. What is it? What's the name?
Well, there's Lou
Malnati's.
Malnati's, there's Gino's East, there's gosh, my brain just shut down on me. There's multiple of them.
Yeah.
I took Bishop Tim to Lou Malnati's when I first met him, when he first came into town. So when you come in, let me know, and I got you.
That sounds great. But we need that particular flavor coming from the community, rather than these outsiders coming in and wanting to kind of. And I'm not charging any of those missions that they aren't serious or whatever else. But I think sometimes it discredits that God is already doing something in those communities, and coming in as Bishop, as Dr. Ephraim Smith talks about when he first went to Sacramento, and he went around and asked the ministers that were already there, basically for their permission or their blessing, to do the work in community.
Right.
And sometimes these individuals, they come in and just come in with their programs without acknowledging those of us that have already been there.
And come in as though, and now the gospel is here. Like, it's like, hold up. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. That's a beautiful thing. Well, hey, let's kind of gear down here and talk about some of the stuff that I don't know about Bobo. So is there anything that you would say is either funny or interesting, or dare I say even embarrassing, to tell people about Anthony Bobo Jr.?
Yeah, so this is the thing that too many people don't know. So when we were in high school in Atlanta, my brother, and like in Atlanta, high school went from, I think it might have started at 8th grade all the way to 12th grade. It might even start at 7th, but definitely 8th grade.
Okay.
And man, we were getting picked on all the time. So my dad was tired of us getting picked on. So he took us to judo, and we took judo. And I ended up being like pretty good at judo. Even sometimes today, I think about going back to judo. The only problem is, man, that has to be 30 years ago. And I'm a little bit more afraid of breaking things. Back then I didn't think about it, but now, man, I'm a little bit more fearful of breaking things. So
and by breaking things, you mean breaking you, right?
Yes. No, not breaking anyone else. Breaking me, breaking an arm, breaking a finger, right. Breaking my nose, all that kind of thing. So, but man, that was some good times back then. And a lot of people don't know that I did that. But yeah, I wish I would have saved the trophies. I don't even know we have pictures of that time. But when I go home, when we're in Tampa in December, I'm gonna go look for those pictures now that you brought it up.
That's come on, there you go. So wait, when you say you had trophies, so when you say you were kind of good, so you were like doing competitions and stuff?
Oh yeah, man, we were doing competitions. We went to the local YMCA, and we go there, man, and we, they have different tournaments and stuff that we were a part of. Wow. I ended up being one of the best in our YMCA. Remember, there was this one guy that he was the best, and man, he would kill me when we first came in. But then when I started graduating the chokeholds and stuff like that, you could take like the garment and make somebody choke and stuff, and I got that kind of stuff down.
It was over.
Couldn't take me. Right. The establishment wasn't happy with it. Man, those were some good times.
Well, I hate to do this to you. I am from here on going to call you Bruce Leroy. That is that is your new nickname. When I say that in the next cohort,
see, that's wrong. That's wrong. I'm supposed to be able to share here. It's supposed to be a safe space just between me and you. And now, you know,
it's
now
a safe
they got a nickname
space.
out of
It's
it.
a safe space. See, like, I can't even touch you. You like hundreds of miles away. You're very safe. And it's just me and you and however many people watching and listening. Look, if it offends you, I won't. But The Last Dragon was one of my favorite movies. Bruce Leroy, come on, man, that was the man. You know, when you got that clothes.
Exactly.
Oh man, this has been such a blessing. Thank you so much for coming on the show and the podcast. I know that the viewers and listeners have all been blessed by this and maybe even challenged as well. And I hope that some folks are really going to really take some of the thoughts that you shared here and continue to meditate on those and inquire with the Lord about them. So we talked about the book, and I'll have the link to that in the notes. Is there a place where they can discover more about the Joseph Factor group?
Yeah,
maybe get a hold of you somewhere.
Yeah, just type in josephfactor.com will come up. You can reach me there. I'm always looking forward to connecting and supporting different individuals as you're doing your work. And yeah, just reach out to us. We'd be happy to help.
Sounds great. Well, thank you once again, Anthony Bobo Jr., my brother.